This is Gemara in Kesubos, Daf Pei Gimel. Again, this is the Daf for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. We're a drop late, but hopefully we'll be catching up all today. And again, one more time, we'd like to dedicate today's Daf as lezchot, Aliyat, neshama, for Reyzel, Mair, the learning the entire Chabura as we begin the 9th parak of Kesubos, begin a new year of Daf Yomi, should bring us Reyzel, Mair to an iron place in Gan Eden Shalmayla. And we begin the parak really picking up a bit of that which we learned in the last parak, which is how does the husband's relationship to his wife's properties, what is the husband allowed to use, what is he not allowed to use, how is he allowed to use them, etc. So says the Mishnah, if a husband writes to his wife, I don't have any claim, I don't have anything to say with your properties. Now again, let's remind ourselves, we're talking about Nechsei Malog, which we've learned extensively in the previous parak, that the din is that the husband gets the payros, that the husband gets the usage of the item, whereas his wife retains the karen, the principle, that if, first of all, if she dies, he gets that, but in the event of death or divorce, she gets the principle, she gets the land back. So now what happens if the husband goes and says, this land that we're talking about, that I'm supposed to get the payros and you get the karen, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Says the Mishnah, even though he wrote that, he's still allowed to eat the produce, he's still allowed to get that which the field produces in her lifetime. V'meisa, and if she dies before him, Yarsha, he still inherits that land. So says the Mishnah, I don't understand. If either way he gets the produce, if either way she dies, he inherits her. So why do you write, I don't have any claim with your property? Explains the Gemara Mishnah, you know why? The reason is, it helps that if she goes and sells or give away this field, at that level, the husband has nothing to do with it. So we're seeing there's three things the husband has with this field. Number one, payros. Number two, if she dies, he inherits it. And number three is that usually she cannot sell this field. But, says the Mishnah, stage number one, is that if he writes, I don't want to have anything to do with your field, then the halacha is, if she goes and sells the field, the sale is good. Continues the Mishnah, stage two. The husband writes, I don't have anything to do with your field and with its produce. Then the halacha is, he can't eat the produce, because he said explicitly, he wrote explicitly, I don't have anything to do with your produce. V'meisa, and if she dies, then Yarsha, he still inherits her. Rav Yehuda Omer la'olam eichal peiros. Peiros says Rav Yehuda, he always eats the produce at Sheikh Lavladin Dvar Milim Nechasecha, Ubepeiroisein, Ubepeiroisein ad Oilam. But level number 3 is Kasadin Dvar Milim Nechasecha, Ubepeiroisein, Ubepeiroisein, Bechayecha B'maisach. If he says, I have nothing to do with this field, it's produce is produce, in your lifetime and after your death, then he fully severs himself from this field. Then says the Mishnah number 1, number 2, but says if Shimni Amliel Rashbag Omer Emesa Yershena. What? He still inherits it. How could that be? Says Rashbag, it's true. It's true that he wrote, I have nothing to do with this field. But guess what? You cannot make it tonight. You cannot stipulate something that which says in the Bible, if you make a condition which runs contrary to that which the Torah says, then the Tanai, the stipulation is batal. And because this stipulation is contrary to that which the Torah says, and that the husband, yes, inherits this field, the Tanai would be batal. Explains the Gemara, Tani Rab Chia. Teaches Rav Chia a brisa, which is going to be very similar to that which we just learned in the Mishnah. Rav Chia learned Ha'omer. The whole Mishnah was HaKaisiv, the name of the parak, as you see on the top of the page. HaKaisiv Lishta, you're right. But Rav Chia learned the exact same din in the Mishnah, but instead of HaKaisiv, he learned Ha'omer. One says to his wife the same din. Says the Gemara, V'chikasiv la my have. But if he wrote it to her, then what difference does it make? What the difference? According to Rav Chia, if he says it, if he writes it, hachi, my have, v'atanya, but we learned in a braysa, ha'imr l'chaveiro, din dvar mainly al sada zu, mainly isik ba. Someone says to his friend, I have nothing to do with this field that we're partnering with. Mainly isik ba, v'yodem yisulekas me'enu, my hands are completely removed from it. La'imr klum, it's meaningless. Why? Because they're actually owners. He can't just remove himself ownership from the field. So what do we see? We see clearly in the Brisa that when one says, I have nothing to do with this field, it does not work. So how can the husband say the same thing? Explains the Gemara, Amri Dvei Rav Yanai b'koisev lo v'oida rusa. So says Rav Yanai, a critical din that we didn't necessarily know in the Mishnah of the Brisa, that the halacha of the Mishnah and the Brisa is referring to when he says this while they're only Eirisin, not before Eirisin, because before Eirisin, there's no connection between this man and woman at all. They're not even engaged. But once they did Eirisin, then there's some level of connection, but they didn't do Nisuin yet. So in that scenario, that's when the din of the Mishnah applies, Kidder Rav Kahana. In a scenario that one is going to get something, he doesn't have it right now, he's going to inherit something from someone else, then one is allowed to make a tanai that he's not going to inherit it. He's allowed to make a tanai that he's not going to inherit it. And that's going to be the din of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, the Rava, and this fits with the din of Rava. Someone says, I don't want the tekanas chachamim like this one. Shaymim loy. Then we listen to him, the fact that he says he doesn't want this tekanas chachamim, it works. So similarly in this case, if he says, I don't want to inherit this field, it works. Says the Gemara, Mikey Goinzu, what do you mean? Similar to this one? Says Ravuna Amarav, a din that we've seen many times, a woman is able to say to her husband, we're 10 lines from the bottom of the Amid, Eini Nizaynes, Veini Yaisa. Just like a woman is able to say to her husband, I'm going to keep my paycheck. I'm not going to give it to you, and you'll have to support me. So too, and the reason is because that's a din d'Rabbanan. So too, the husband is able to do the same thing, that it's a din d'Rabbanan, that the husband gets usage of his wife's nechsei malog. So he's able to say, I don't want to have anything to do with the nechsei malog. Just like she is able to say, I don't want us to be supported by you, he is able to say, I don't want to have anything to do with your nechsei malog. Ask the Gemara Yachi if what you're saying is correct, that we're going with Rava, that it's a din d'Rabbanan, they're able to waive your rights to it. If that is true, I feel in the Suanami. Ask the Gemara, you just told me that the din in the Mishnah is a din by Erusin. Why? It should even be by Nisuin. Amar Abaye explains Abaye, Nisua Yadai Ke Yada. A very important rule. Says Abaye that when someone does Nisuin, when someone consummates the marriage, the halacha is that the husband and wife are equal. That with regard to the Nichsi Malug, they're considered to be fully partners, and therefore he cannot remove himself from it. Rava says even more. Yadai Adifa mi Yada. Even though really it's her field, but once they get married, his hand is even greater than his wife. Nafkamina, what's the difference? L'shaymeres yavam. The difference is going to be in the case of a woman awaiting yibam. Let's see Rashi. Rashi explains the nafkamina over here. Let's see Rashi. Rashi is 10 lines into the wide lines. Kiloimar. We know that whenever Rashi says kiloimar, that means it's not necessarily the simple reading of the Gemara. Kiloimar lini dinu dvarim loy poligi te bein yadai kil yada. Bein yadai adifa mi yada. In mayel ba'lashe dinu dvarim l'salka. Look at the Bible. Lini shemeres yavam mitzterich. That says the Gemara, this machlokes Rava and Abaye doesn't really make a difference with regard to our discussion. The difference is only with regard to the din of a shemeres yavam. And Rashi continues quoting the Gemara Nivamas Taf Lamed Ches Amid Beis, that where that machlokes would be relevant. Let's continue. Says the Gemara, we're 4 lines from the Bayram, Ibayilahu. We just said a moment ago, with regard to partners, shutfim, that if one partner wants to just tell his friend, I have nothing to do with this field, it's meaningless. So now asks the Gemara, Ibayilu, Kanu miyadai mau. What if he says, I have nothing to do with this field, and then he makes a kinyan? Does the kinyan work to remove himself from that field? Amar Rav Yosef midinu dvarim, Kanu miyadai. Says Rav Yosef, the midinu dvarim kanu miyadai. You know what he was kinda? The words. And just like the words are nothing, says Rav Yosef, the kinyan is meaningless. Rav Nachman Amar, no. Megufa shal karka kanu miyadai, he makes the kinyan from the karka itself, meaning he could effectively remove himself from this piece of land with this kinyan. Amar Rabbi explains the Bayram Mistavra Milsa to Rav Yosef. So Rabbi says, Rav Yosef, who said that the kinyan was meaningless, is mistaver, makes the most sense. We turn over to Tebei Gimel and Beis and explains the Baya be'oirer. In what scenario? In a scenario in which the original owner is protesting, that's when the kinyan is meaningless. But where the original owner is quiet for a day and only then protests afterwards, then kanu miyadai, then indeed the kinyan does work, and then it would be valid. Meaning, when Rav Yosef said that the subsequent kinyan on the words in which one partner says to the other to remove himself are meaningless, it's only if the other party, if the original owner is sitting and being ma'ir, he's sitting and saying he doesn't want this. But if he was quiet, then it would work. And Amar Amemar on the second line of Begimel Mebein Zelchsa Miguva Shal Karka Kana Miyadai says Amemar, we do not pass like Rav Yosef, we pass like Rav Nachman, that the kinyan works, that he effectively removes himself from the land itself. Amar Ravashi the Amemar, but Ravashi asks, Ba'ir ay ba'imid. You just said we're passing Rav Nachman. In what scenario? In a case in which the original owner is quiet or not, says Rav Yosef. You know the nafkamina is like the din of Rav Yosef. So Amar le lo shmili klamer lo shvir li. He didn't hold that there was any difference. We continue quoting the Mishnah 6 lines down in Kain Lama Kasav La. We said in the Mishnah that what does it help if she could go and sell it and give it away? That it works. So what does it help? The fact that the husband said, "Me didn't dvarim, I don't have anything to do with this field." Asks the Gemara, "V'tema lei." Why did the wife say, "Mikol mili salikis nafshach"? You removed yourself from everything. Why can't the wife say that? Amar Abaya, Yad balashtar ala tachtoino. You know why? Because the balashtar, the one with the document, he gets the weaker hand, and therefore, in any case which is not clear, the one that holds the shtar only can collect the bare minimum. So in our case, the husband has, as we spoke out when we started the Mishnah, 3 dinim over here. 3 different requirements there are of the nichsei malug to the husband. That he consumes the produce, he inherits it, and if she sells it, it does not work. So now, when the wife goes and sells the land, when the wife goes and she has a shtar in which it says that the husband says, I have nothing to do with this field. We don't know what exactly does that mean. Which of the 3 rights that the husband has is he relinquishing? Is he removing himself when he wrote the shtar that said, and therefore, says Abaya, a general rule, that any time you pull out a shtar in Bezdin and you want to be moitzi, you want to win with that shtar, your yada is on the tachtaina, and therefore you don't get the full power of the shtar, you get the bare minimum. And therefore, if she sells it, he's going to retain that value. The ema mi peri. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. But why don't we say that the husband only took himself away from the payers of the field? Why are you saying he actually would get the field in the event that it was sold? He could block that sale. Amar Abayo boitina tav mikara. A small gourd now is better than a large gourd later. And therefore, if we have a question of which one the husband did, we presume and we assume that the husband retained the consumption of the produce and he just withdrew himself from the eventual sale. Ve'ema miyarusha. Ask the Gemara, why do we say the husband withdrew himself from inheriting the field? Death is more common than sale, and therefore if we have to choose which one the husband withdrew himself with, it's going to be that which is loy shchicha. V'chi misalik inish nafshei mimilsas loy shchicha umimilsas the shchicha lo misalik in nafshei. From something that which is common or comparatively common, we don't assume he withdrew himself from. Rav Ashi Amar says, Rav Ashi, a different way of learning the Mishnah. A different way of learning the Mishnah that says that the husband only removes himself from the nichsei melug. Says Rav Ashi, that when the husband says, what were the words that he said in the Mishnah? So he said your property, which does not include the peiros, your property, which does not include lachar misa after the death. That's the reason why the husband is still going to retain the rights after his wife dies. Continues the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah 20 lines down. The first one line has been a chasecha, the two dots. Rav Yehuda said Rav Yehuda, unless he wrote extensively and explicitly that he's fully removing himself, then the husband still retains the rights to Peirei Peiros. Tanu Rabbanan says the Gemara, Elu ein Peiros, Elu ein Peirei Peiros. What's the difference? If she brings in a piece of land and it produces, that's the produce. Machar Peiros, if she sold the fruit, bought land, Peiros, and then that land had a produce. Harei ein Peirei Peiros, that is the second generation, that is the Peiros of the Peiros. So Ibayalu asks the Gemara, the Rav Yehuda Peiros Davka Dama Ad Oilam Davka. When Rav Yehuda said that the only way to remove yourself from the property is to say Peiros Ad Oilam, two different Lashainis. So says the Gemara, which of these terminologies is the critical one? According to Rav Yehuda, is Peiros Davka, or Idilma Ad Oilam Davka, or Idilma Tervayu Davka. Or maybe both of them are necessary. So what was pshat in Rav Yehuda? So says the Gemara, if he meant specifically Peiros, why did he say Ad Oilam? That when he said Peiros, if he said Ad Oilam, but if Ad Oilam is Davka Peiros Lamali, he goes Ad Oilam in Eloi. So that's why, says the Gemara, both are relevant. But that both Ad Oilam and Peiros are as precise. Tarti Lamali. Why do you have to say both phrases? So explains the Gemara. I would think it's specifically only Peiros he's removing himself from. Aval Peiro. The Peiros, the next generation, the fruit of the fruit of the fruit. Achli Kidyasit. Because that the Alaylam is going to the Peiros, but the first level of Peiros he would get. And this is where Rav Yehuda gets the fact. He has to write not only Peiros, not only at Oilam, both of them, says Rav Yehuda, are critical ingredients in that which he has to write to fully remove himself from this piece of land. And we conclude, we don't conclude yet. Peiros. We quote the din in the Mishnah. Ibayalo, one more time. Peiros. Period. So Ibayalo asked the Gemara another kasha over 10 lines to the bottom. First one line is Peiros. If he wrote that I don't want to have anything to do with you or your fields, or your Peiros, Peiros. Is he allowed to eat the first level Peiros? It's a very similar question to previously. Says the Gemara, why? Why is that so obvious? Because if you think he only is removing himself from the second generation produce, but not from the Peiros themselves, if you already ate the first level, where are you going to get the second level Peiros from? So it must be that that's forbidden as well. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to have to answer. You're going to have to answer the cases that you have to have leftovers. Meaning, if there were no leftovers, you're right. But if you have to have leftovers, that's what it's referring to. Therefore, we'll have to say the same thing for the Tanakama, and therefore we do not have a raya. Pick it up from Shimon Gamliel.